Is 50 elderly? California law says it is when it comes to criminals, making them eligible for early release.
Why even sentence someone to life then? Because that's not what it's going to mean.
Victims, their families, and law enforcement speaking out about the law that took effect 5 years ago. The law banning federal officers from wearing masks blocked by a federal judge.
The federal court told us that it is enforceable. We have the power to do this, but it has to include state police.
With more manufacturers than any state in the nation, how President Trump's tariffs are impacting California.
Thank you for joining us for California Politics 360. I'm Ashley Zabala. Renewed outrage and concern this week over California's 5-year-old elderly parole law. It was meant to help with prison overcrowding. Criminals 50 years or older are eligible for early release so long as they have been behind bars for at least 20 years. The concern? Who all is eligible? Violent offenders like murderers and rapists can be considered. Michelle Bander spoke with families pleading with the state to keep their attackers behind bars. We want to warn you, the details in these cases are hard to hear.
Two California women with the same fight. Both pleading with the state to keep two convicts, a murderer of a mother of 5 and a rapist, behind bars.
Please, I beg you to review this case. He is a repeat violent offender and a rapist. Lives are at stake.
What can I possibly say today to make complete strangers understand the magnitude of our loss?
In 1991, a Sacramento County judge sentenced George Boris to 25 years to life for killing his girlfriend with a hammer 10 years earlier. The victim, 43-year-old Nancy Nelson, was Karen Hustis' mother.
I guess it was 9 or 10 months, from what I can remember, of just her being afraid all the time. I have before me here some articles. More than anything, I'm saving them for the story for my own children. The district attorney told us, you know, you don't have to worry now. Now you know he's going to be put away. He's away for a long time, and you can go on and live in peace. I knew I was in trouble, and I knew that if I didn't do exactly what he said, that he was going to kill me.
An Alameda County judge sentenced Thomas Martinez in 2004 to 56 years to life for raping 2 women, one of them, Jennifer Carvalho.
As he had the knife to my neck, I remember thinking, if I scream, he's going to kill me. And my son's going to wake up in the morning and find his mom dead. This guy's going to get away for life. We did it. We did it, and I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be okay.
She says that sense of safety now gone 2 decades later, learning her rapist could be released.
I said, no. He got a 56 to life sentence. He wasn't even supposed to be eligible for parole until the year 2051. What do you mean he's up for parole?
Why even sentence someone to life then? Because that's not what it's going to mean.
Both inmates qualify for elder parole. Martinez is 54, Boris 77. The elder parole law means inmates who have served 25 years and reached the age of 60 could be considered for parole. But in 2021, California lawmakers changed the law and the definition of being elderly, lowering the age to 50 and having served 20 years.
Sacramento County Sheriff Jim Cooper is also calling on lawmakers to step up. The sheriff sounded the alarm this week after the parole board agreed to let a 64-year-old serial child rapist walk free under this law. Late this week, Placer County filed new charges against David Funston stemming from 1996. Right before that, I spoke with Sheriff Cooper about Funston and his initial release from prison. Details in these cases are also hard to hear. Here's part of my conversation with the sheriff. Sheriff Cooper, you were an assemblyman back in 2020 when lawmakers and the governor agreed to lower the elder parole age to 50. You voted no, but what's your understanding at the time that pushed them to ultimately do that?
It really wasn't clear. I mean, they talked about lowering it in age and elderly prisoners, and when in fact it wasn't. And I think a lot of it's convoluted, a lot of these bills, and that's one of the reasons when you vote on 3,000 bills a year, 3,000 bills are introduced, that's problematic because you can't do a deep dive on the bills, and it really does a disservice to Californians.
Republicans are now calling on Governor Gavin Newsom to remove the parole commissioners who voted to release child rapist David Funston as a result of that elder parole law. I mean, is that what the governor should do?
He's got to make the decision. I read the report. I read all the reports. There were 8 victims in Sacramento County, 7 boys and 1 girl. And when I read those reports, they were heart-wrenching. So I'm not really sure what they read. I'll be honest, what's their moral compass? And I'll read a couple of things to you. A 3-year-old girl abducted from the front of her aunt's house. This is the actual report. Took her to his home. He undressed her, took a bath with her, sexually assaulted her, threatened to kill her with a knife if she told anyone. Took her back to her house and again reiterated, if you told anyone, I'll kill you. This is a victim statement at 3 years old. Another girl in North Highlands in Sacramento kidnapped her, drove up in the car, offered her candy. When she went to take it, he pulled her into the car, drove her away, sexually assaulted her, tried to assault her again, and she refused. He punched her in the face, blooding her lip, and kicked her out of her car with no shoes on in Pollock Pines. That's 50 miles away from Sacramento. And those are just 2 of the cases. So the commissioners read the cases, they know what the offender's done, and they come to that conclusion. On God's earth, how do you come to that conclusion? How is he safe? There are certain things you do where you don't get a second chance. And when it comes to children, all bets are off.
The LA Times reported that those commissioners, though, said they did not believe Funston posed a significant danger anymore because of apparently the extensive self-help that he got, the therapy work he did, and the sex offender treatment classes that he completed in at least the 2 decades he spent in prison, plus the detailed plan he apparently has to avoid his repeated crimes. They also pointed to good behavior in prison. What's your response to that?
His crimes are so egregious. For someone to do that, they actually go out and kidnap kids and take them and molest them. I didn't get into the details of these reports. They're very graphic. So, of course, you're spending 30 years in jail. You're going to play the game and go to class because it's good behavior. So everyone, for the most part, does that. They go and play the game in prison. They attend classes. They say the right thing. This is 8 kids and 1 in Colorado. I guarantee you there are more kids he did this to that we just don't know about, unreported. And you're willing to take a chance on that? He will say anything to get out of prison. He's been there. He wants his freedom. So it's really a game. I've been in law enforcement for 33 years and been around it for 40 years. I know what I'm talking about. He has an appetite for children. He displayed it, and he got caught. And that 3-year-old boy I read about, that he sexually assaulted also, I didn't read it, but the boy picked him out of a lineup. I'm sorry, a 4-year-old boy picked his photo out of a photographic lineup. Those kids are traumatized the rest of their life. He stole their childhood. He should get nothing. And it's here, I've lived in Sacramento my whole life, Ashley. It's a continual fight. Human trafficking of a child wasn't a violent felony. We're fighting that. Mental health aversion. You can beat your kid to death and get your record expunged. It's always a constant fight for kids. Who is defending our kids? Right now, nobody.
Sheriff Cooper and I also discussed the state's mental health diversion law, which allows some criminals to be eligible to have their charges tossed and record expunged if they get treatment. California's mask ban blocked. San Francisco Senator Scott Wiener says he's not giving up the changes he made in a new version of the ban. This week, a federal appellate court is set to hear arguments on a California law requiring federal officers and ICE agents to show IDs. It comes after a federal judge last month blocked a state law that banned officers from wearing masks. I sat down with San Francisco Senator Scott Wiener earlier this week, who says he's not giving up on that mask ban. Here's part of our conversation. I want to get just an update on these California laws that are meant to require ICE federal agents to carry ID and wear masks. From your perspective, just given the movement in the courts right now, where do those stand?
Yeah, so for the law that I authored, Senate Bill 627, it's on hold. because the federal court told us that it is enforceable. We have the power to do this, but it has to include state police. When we passed the law, we included all local law enforcement, so all sheriffs, all police departments, and the federal government, but not the state level, which is a very small portion of law enforcement. And we thought that that would be defensible because the vast majority of California law enforcement is included. The federal judge decided otherwise and said we have to include the state level as well. And so I immediately introduced Senate Bill 1004 to put the state police into the bill, and then it will be enforceable.
It looks like an appellate court is going to consider the requirement for officers to carry IDs. Mm-hmm. The federal government is basically saying, not just with that law, but also the masking law, regardless of who it applies to, they're claiming that it violates the supremacy clause. Just what's your response to that? What happens if the court ends up siding with them on IDs?
Well, we'll see how the court rules and what they say. Yes, the Trump administration is taking the position that states have no power to tell federal employees what to do, and that's contrary to longstanding law. Federal employees, including agents, have to follow many state laws, whether it's a speed limit or different criminal laws, or whatever the case may be. There are many situations where federal employees have to follow state law, and that is the case here as well. The head of ICE stated early last year that masking is not essential for ICE to do its job, that it's not something that the agency tells them to do, that it just doesn't stop them from wearing a mask if they want to. And the reality is that we have a multi-century history of law enforcement in the United States of America where they overwhelmingly do not wear masks. Federal, state, local. There are very limited exceptions, like SWAT team, for example, but the vast majority, particularly patrolling officers, do not wear these masks. And so we believe we have the power. Obviously, we'll see what the courts rule.
I also speak with Senator Wiener about his assessment of the Democratic Party after being one of only a few candidates in an open race to get an endorsement from the party. He explains which statewide race he is concerned about. Well, California has the most manufacturing companies than any other state in the country. The challenges companies have faced with the president's tariffs this year. California has more manufacturers in the state than any in the country, and they are seeing the impact of the president's tariffs. Earlier this week, I spoke with the president of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association. Here's part of our conversation. So, Lance, actually, last time we spoke was about a year ago when President Donald Trump laid out these tariffs, and it's been on again, off again, and then now the court has weighed in that he can't really do these, but he still is saying he wants to do them anyway. Just what's it been like for manufacturers in this state?
Well, for the past year, it's been very destabilizing. We rely on certainty to make decisions. We're heavily and capital intensive. We can't make financial decisions in a 60-day time frame. We need 5 years and 10-year windows, and we haven't had that for the last year. And it's been a kind of a whipsaw because a lot of our supply chains are international, some are domestic, but tariffs really have the effect of destabilizing that discussion. And for the manufacturing sector, I think we've been hit pretty hard.
Are there any industries specifically at the top of your mind that have been hit the hardest or that are really feeling this?
I would say within the manufacturing sector, aerospace and technology, because so many of our supply chain and value chain components come from elsewhere, including our friends in Mexico and Canada. So it's just that predictability and the cost driver in a state that affordability is a really big issue. We're actually raising costs on California manufacturers.
I mean, on affordability, if so much is being made here, if California has the most manufacturers in the country, I mean, what is contributing to the cost of making things?
A lot of it for us is the input of energy, for one. California has 200% of the average of the nation in energy costs. That's really hard to be competitive. particularly with our neighbors in Oregon, Nevada, and Arizona. It's very difficult, but it's a great state. We have 40 million people. We have some of the greatest universities in the world here. The workforce is incredible, and just that California spirit is really what drives manufacturing, but we're doing it at an added cost that I think is necessary.
And the tariffs on top of that, I mean, even though they're meant to encourage production in this country, are they not helping? Do they help?
Yeah, well, since COVID, we've actually had a national discussion about reshoring jobs and manufacturing to the United States. That's fantastic. It's great for us in California, but it's great for the country. And as we do that, though, there's some natural processes that take place, particularly that capital investment I was talking about. Tariffs tend to interrupt and provide either a break to the system, but we need to have a conversation that says, who are our trading partners? Why are they so important to us? And let's trade with them, and let's do things on an open and fair playing field so that we can export too. Tariffs tend to be thought of as things are coming into the country. What about the great American exports that we're trying to share with the rest of the world? You
mentioned the added cost of doing business in California. What do you need state lawmakers and the governor to do to help in this situation?
Well, we've got a couple of things. The first is everyone's talking about manufacturing. So great job for everybody. The legislature, the governor, all of the administrative bodies, they're all talking about manufacturing because we all realize how important it is, not only to the state's economy, but the good paying jobs that are in our sector. So that part, check, we're doing a really good job. The next part, though, is having those actions follow up with it. California is a bad example in this case of one of 38 states that do not have a broad manufacturer's investment credit on the books to support manufacturing. And simply stated, if you buy $1 million piece of equipment to expand your operations, there'd be a tax credit roughly equivalent to $100,000. 38 other states do that already, and another 6 states don't even charge a sales tax at all. So California is an outlier in supporting manufacturing here in a partnership with the government. We're not making an ask for a handout. We're just saying, treat us like the other manufacturers in the country. That by itself would be a huge infusion of energy and attention to manufacturing. And the second would be, we really have to get a handle on energy costs in the state. There's no reason why the California average is twice the national average.
In our full interview online, we dive deep into those issues that Lance is calling the state and governor to address. Well, remembering civil rights activist Reverend Jesse Jackson, his impact in California. Today, a memorial service is being held for civil rights activist Reverend Jesse Jackson. Tomorrow, his body will lie in state at the South Carolina State Capitol. Edie Lambert takes a look back at his life and his impact on California.
Reverend Jesse Jackson helped lead the civil rights movement for decades after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Reverend Jackson and Dr. King had worked together for 3 years after first meeting in March of 1965. They expanded the work by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference to Chicago. And Reverend Jackson was actually talking with Dr. King from below the balcony of the Lorraine Motel at the moment King was assassinated on April 4th of 1968. Reverend Jackson then continued Dr. King's mission. Following in his footsteps, Reverend Jackson was ordained as a Baptist minister. In 1984, Jackson founded the National Rainbow Coalition, a social justice organization. Reverend Jackson ran for president as a Democrat twice, in 1984 and 1988.
When I win, you win.
He made several stops in California, including this rally in Stockton. Reverend Jackson also supported other civil rights activists. In August of 1988, he met with Cesar Chavez near the end of his 36-day fast, protesting the use of dangerous pesticides in fields where workers were harvesting food.
His vision is clear. His will to continue is strong.
Reverend Jackson vowed to pick up the chain of fasting to continue that movement. 30 years ago, 2 of Reverend Jackson's foundations merged to create the Rainbow Push Coalition, and their work continues today, helping people find jobs, providing financial assistance for housing, and offering thousands of scholarships. They have offices throughout the United States, including here in California, in Oakland and Los Angeles. In the final years of his life, Reverend Jackson fought a rare neurological disorder that impacted his ability to move and to speak. On February 17th, surrounded by his family, Reverend Jackson passed away at his home in Chicago. He was 84 years old.
Thank you for joining us for this week's California Politics 360. See you next Sunday.